This is Michele Roland-Schwartz with the Oregon Sexual Assault Task Force and Sybil Hebb with the Oregon Law Center. And we're doing this very informal webinar to serve as a primer for Advocacy Day, which is February 22nd at the Capitol starting at 8:45. And Sybil and I wanted to talk with you just to prepare folks for Advocacy Day, give you some tips on meeting with legislators that day, and do an overview of the Oregon Alliance to End Violence Against Women legislative priorities. We have available on the Sexual Assault Task Force website a copy of the Alliance priorities, which we encourage you to print out as you listen to this webinar today, and also want to share with you a couple of dates that we have scheduled to meet as a statewide alliance. And the first is going to be February 10th from 12 until 1, and call-in information is available either by email, which you should receive soon if you have not already, and is also available on the Sexual Assault Task Force website. The other dates that we have scheduled are March 10th and April 14th, again from 12 until 1, and we hope that you'll join us for those phone calls so that you can get updates on what's happening in the Capitol on the Alliance priorities, and other issues that the legislature is addressing this session. So, wanted to start out with the Oregon Alliance to End Violence Against Women priorities. And if you're not familiar with the Alliance, it is essentially a group of statewide partners that come together to convene and identify issues that are affecting survivors across the state. And those groups include the Oregon Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, Oregon Attorney General Sexual Assault Task Force, the Oregon Law Center, Partnership for Safety and Justice, and OASIS, as well as community-based domestic violence sexual assault programs that serve survivors all across the state. So thank you for what you do, and for participating in the Alliance survey, which helped us identify what our priorities are this session. And we have those categorized under 3 areas, which you'll see in the handout. The first that we wanted to share with you today is funding for survivors of domestic and sexual assault. And the first issue is related to punitive damages, which is funding that the Oregon Department of Justice Crime Victim Services Division receives. And they recently received a settlement that we want to preserve as much as possible for crime victims. And that funding primarily supports things like the SAVE Fund, Crime Victims Compensation, the Address Confidentiality Program, and a variety of other services that are critical to survivors across the state, and without which we would have a very difficult time serving survivors. So we are working with and supporting Crime Victim Services Division at DOJ to help advocate to maintain and preserve that funding. And Sybil, I don't know if you can now talk about some of the other funding priorities.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I reiterate the thanks for all of the great work that you're all doing and the help that you're willing to lend us in advocating for these services. So in addition to the punitive damages fund that Michele talked about, there is, as always, the Alliance's highest priority is ensuring support for the Oregon Domestic and Sexual Violence Services Fund. You may know that it's ODSVS. And that fund is about $8 million per biennium right now for services to survivors across the state, and we would like to get a $2 million increase to those services. We know that those funds are insufficient right now to meet the needs of survivors, so we're looking for an increase to make it easier for you all to have the capacity, both structurally as well as with your staff and support services, to meet the needs of survivors in your communities. So we'll be seeking a $2 million increase to the ODSVS fund as one of our highest priorities. A little bit of background that's useful for both the punitive damages as well as the ODSVS items is that the state right now is facing almost a $2 billion with a B deficit that they will have to figure out how to manage in terms of all of their services in this coming session. And so the competition for funding is really, really fierce, and it will be our jobs, with your help, to make sure that legislators understand the critical need for these services for survivors and make sure that those services are in the number of programs that get funded with our limited dollars. So I think that is it on the ODSBS fund, and I'll come back to some other funding items down the line.
Okay, great. So one of the other priorities for the Alliance is under the umbrella of prevention and response, and specifically primary prevention in Oregon's K through 12 system and within the community college system. And so that is Senate Bill 318. And what Senate Bill 318 would do is establish two critical positions at the Oregon Department of Education. One position would increase a current position at ODE, the Sexuality Education Specialist. That position is at half-time currently, and we want to increase it to full-time so that we can align sexual health promotion with violence prevention. So our advocacy is for a half-time violence prevention specialist, which would bring that position whole and allow our statewide infrastructure to be strengthened in supporting K through 12 and implementing things like the Healthy Teen Relationship Act and align that with our comprehensive sex ed laws, and also help us implement Aaron's Law so that we can really implement some very good legislation that has passed in previous years and provide that state level infrastructure to support educators who we know are addressing and seeing bullying, harassment, and other forms of violence, and that we're only seeing an increase in that recently across the state. The other component of the bill would establish one FTE to serve as the Title IX specialist for Oregon's community colleges. And only Oregon's community colleges, because that is the jurisdiction of Oregon Department of Education. The position would help our community colleges be compliant with and provide some technical legal guidance around federal and state mandates as related to Title IX, the Clery Act, student health records, and notifying students of their rights to resources available to them. And that includes on-campus investigation and adjudication procedures, civil and criminal justice responses. We wanted to pair these two positions together because, as you all know, we see the link between K through 12 and community colleges as a very critical link. And if we're going to address campus sexual assault, an issue that we've been talking about as a country for a while, we need to also address education and primary prevention in K through 12. So we will be asking for 1.5 FTE, and understand that that is a fiscal ask during a very difficult budgetary session, and also see this as a really critical conversation to have with our legislators, and will continue to do so, particularly around primary prevention and the benefits of prevention. So that is our second kind of umbrella priority. And now, Sybil, I hope you can talk about housing.
Excellent. Thank you. So I'm thrilled that we are going to be focusing this year on two issues related to housing needs for survivors. And one of the most stunning things, I think, to me, in looking at all of the feedback that we got from our allies and from survivors and from our partners and in survey results, the need for safe, stable, and affordable housing in communities across the state was identified exponentially above all other needs for survivors. We know that the overlap between housing instability and vulnerability to domestic and sexual violence is great. And so survivors in Oregon need to make sure they have emergency services available to them that will help them get into shelter and transitional housing. And we also need to make sure that when survivors are in permanent housing, that it remains stable for them and affordable for them. So there are two different proposals that we'll be working on that respond to those issues. Number one, we'll be working on a $10 million increase to the emergency housing account and the state homeless assistance program. Those are two general fund dollar sources that go to the statewide network of shelters and also to transitional housing. Some of those dollars go to domestic and sexual violence shelter programs and service programs. Others go purely to shelter and housing programs. Either way, we know that survivors will benefit from having greater resources in communities across the state through those funds. The other aspect of the emergency housing account is that it can be used to help individuals who are struggling to avoid homelessness or who are struggling to get off the streets and into housing. So the fund can be used to pay for things like deposits or electricity bills or first month's rent, or it's a flexible source of dollars that can be used to help address people's emergency housing needs. So that is our primary funding request related to housing needs. There's also a very important policy proposal related to housing, and that proposal is embodied in House Bill 2004. It's a priority of the Speaker of the House, Speaker Tina Kotek, and of many people on both the House and the Senate side, and we are lucky that this bill is moving forward with such strong support. However, there is also a great deal of opposition, and so we will really need to hear from voices in communities sharing stories of housing instability and why it's so critical for the state to take steps to resolve that instability. House Bill 2004 does two things. Number one, it removes what is currently a statewide preemption, statewide ban on any local governments taking any steps to stabilize rents or to help protect affordability. Right now, the market is unregulated, and landlords and housing owners can increase rent with very little notice, however much they want, however often they want. And in times like this, where we have 1% vacancy rates or lower in many communities across the state, in both urban and rural areas, on coastal, eastern, western, southern, this is a problem that's affecting all communities. And in all of these communities right now, rents are virtually unregulated, and local governments have no capacity to put up any sideboards. So the proposal would lift that preemption so that local governments could pass laws, for example, that might say rent increases may only happen X number of times per year, or only up to a certain percentage over as an increase. So it would give governments the flexibility to do what they needed to do on a local basis to address emergency circumstances in their communities. That's one part of the bill. The second part of the bill is a proposal that would establish a just cause eviction standard. Right now in Oregon, a landlord may evict a tenant for no reason at all, even if the tenant has paid the rent on time and complied with all aspects of the rental agreement. A tenant can still be evicted with what's called no-cause eviction. This is a huge problem that is ripe for abuse, especially in current low vacancy rates across the state. We see many examples of landlords using this no-cause eviction as a way to discriminate or retaliate against tenants who are trying to assert their fair housing rights or ask for repairs. We want to make sure that people are protected in their safe and stable housing, and that they're not subject to eviction with as little as 60 days or even 30 days notice, especially in such huge vacancy problems across the state. So we would establish a just cause eviction standard, which would mean that landlords would need to give a legitimate reason, either a tenant fault-based reason or a landlord legitimate business purpose reason for evicting someone and removing them from their housing. The reason this is such a huge issue for survivors is that we often see survivors retaliated against or discriminated against because of their status as survivors, and it's very difficult to resolve that through the courts. The burden is really high right now on a survivor trying to defend herself against that kind of retaliation or discrimination. This bill would resolve that inequality and would create a greater protection for due process and safety and stability. So we'll be supporting the Speaker in her effort to pass House Bill 2004, and we really hope that you'll be able to come and share your stories about the importance of housing stability for survivors.
So thanks again to all of you for helping inform the Alliance priorities for 2017. I know that we wanted to take an opportunity during this webinar to talk about things to think about or tips to think about when we're meeting with our legislators, and I'm hoping you can help us through that.
Absolutely. So I think the best thing to think about in meeting with your legislators is that they are people just like you and me who are doing their best in Salem, working really hard on a daily basis to address issues that are important to their communities. And you, as a member of their community, as a constituent, have a huge role to play in helping them to understand what the impact of the proposals that will be in front of them are. And they're delighted to hear from you. They hear from people like Michele and myself all the time because we're always in the Capitol and we're doing work with them all the time. They don't get a chance to hear from people in their hometowns and in their home districts as much as they would like. So you really have a great voice to share, and it's really important to remember that. You don't need to be formal or an expert. You're already an expert in the services and in the work that you do, and many legislators don't know that much about the issues confronting survivors. So it's really an opportunity to strike up a conversation, have an education session, and really just share on a person-to-person basis examples illustrating the issues that you're facing in your community.
Yeah, the other thing is it's also an opportunity to, continue education around the issues that we're working on. And, depending on what happens this session and the success of the work that we're doing, the fact that we're having conversations and that you're having conversations with legislators, we see the benefit of that each and every time we meet with someone. And it's exciting to have a conversation with a legislator around issues of prevention and to have them finish your sentences for you because they understand the need to address the root cause of violence and also be fluent in issues that are addressing survivors on a day-to-day basis. And so we consider those conversations a success when we go back and meet with legislators and hear your words echoed back to us. So we thank you for participating in this process and helping be the voice for survivors across the state.
And one thing I'll add to that is that I think that we're really working to build relationships over the long haul. So really having coffee with a legislator in your district or inviting a legislator to come tour your program, establishing a relationship that you can then build on really helps because not only do we hear your words echoed back to us, which is just the greatest success, also if a legislator has a question or a concern, they know you and they have a relationship with you and they trust that you are dedicated to these issues in your communities, they'll call you and ask for your feedback. And then you've sort of established a dialogue that we can really work with, and really it helps us to all together advance the protections and services available to survivors in the state, which is our
And Sybil, would you mind giving an overview again of Advocacy Day, including date, time, and how to register?
Absolutely. So Jonathan from the Coalition will be sending out a Google form for you to use as registration. We're asking everybody to register through that form. We will then do the work of making the appointments and assigning you to the time and place where your appointment is. We think it's more effective if we're centrally organizing that so that there's no confusion about who's going where and when. So please look for the form and register, and we will get back to you quickly with your time and information about appointments. The date for Lobby Day, again, is February 22nd. It will be an all-day event. We'll have an orientation session at 8:45 a.m., and we will have that for about half an hour, and then there will be time for appointments. There'll be a break for lunch, and there will be a rally on the steps where we can all get together and show our support for survivor services. There will be presentations by legislators. The Coalition, Oregon Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, will be organizing that rally, and so that'll be a wonderful way to participate in addition to the appointments. There will also be hearings throughout the day and opportunities to observe hearings and listen to discussions related to issues important to survivors, and there will be both the House and the Senate chamber discussions where we can sit in the gallery and listen to some words on the floor related to survivor issues. And at the end, we will gather again together to do a quick debrief related to what you've all learned in your meetings with legislators, so that Michele and Nikki and Carrie and I can all kind of benefit from that information and use it to be more effective in our lobbying after the Awareness Day. So we're really excited for a good turnout, and we really hope that you'll all participate, and really look forward to seeing you.
Yes, and if you have not received a copy of the registration link in your email box, or maybe you're not included on that listserv, if you want to reach out to one of us, you can reach out to myself, to Sybil, or the coalition to be connected with that link. Again, a reminder that we have statewide alliance meetings scheduled for February 10th, March 10th, and April 14th. From 12 until 1, and the call-in information will be sent out via email, and it's also available as an attachment on the task force website, as well as, again, a copy of the Alliance priorities. So thank you again for everything that you do. We hope to see you on February 22nd on Lobby Day, and look forward to continuing working with you this session and in the future.
We really look forward to talking to you and seeing you, and hope you'll call in on February 10th for another opportunity to have discussions before Awareness Day.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.